Come. Who's got it? Come, oh Holy Spirit. Strike it as a lightning, its opposing spark. Burn away the structures and consume the shell of our holy systems. Come in Jesus' name. Come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world has opened. Pentecost is now. Said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world has opened. Pentecost is now. Call away the cobwebs of our stubborn past. Come send flying from us, myths unfit to last. Wind of change refresh us and disturb our calm. Teach us what true love is. Take our hearts by storm. Said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now. I said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now. I said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now. I said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Storm. All the world lies open. Is now. Great.
You know, when tears and laughter are close to the surface of our hearts, we are most alive. And this morning's theme is about church alive, being fully alive as a community of faith, worshiping God, walking with God, being in action, our faith in action. Give to us laughter, a source of our life. Laughter can banish so much of our strife. Give us fullness and health. Laughter and love are the coin of true wealth. Give to us laughter, a sign of deep joy. Let us in laughing find Christian employ. Joining with stars and laughing and praising and sharing dear.
And remembering that we are one. We are one as we there's a sense that God is. We are one as we sing, we are found, and we come needful of God's grace together. Brokenness and fear, touch of a hand, there's a sense that God is near. We are one as we care, as we heal, we are felt, and we share warmth in God's embrace as we pray together in this place. as we hear, heart and hand and night, in a word we receive, in a sense that God is light, we are one as we live, as we love, we are loved, and we seek justice in God's grace as we move together.
And who worship the Lord, worship Creator, the Spirit, the Son, raising our hands in devotion to God who is one, praying and training that we be a blessing, and by our handiwork daily confess humanity, worship and work must Creator, the Spirit, the Son, raising our hands in devotion to God. Now in response to the life you are giving, help us, O Creator, to offer our living, seeking a just and a healing society, worship and work must be one. Worship the Lord, Creator, the Spirit, the Son, raising our hands in Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Amy. Awesome. Let us build a house. Here we go. Let us build a house where love can dwell and tell how hearts learn to forgive. Build of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true, where all God's children dare to seek to dream God's reign anew. Here the cross shall stand as witness and a symbol of God's grace. Here as one we claim the faith of Jesus. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in a house where all are named, their songs and visions heard, and often treasured, taught and claimed as good within the word. Built of tears and cries and laughter, prayers of faith. Let this house proclaim from all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place.
Let's
We're going to sing one more song. We're going to go back to Come, O Holy Spirit, because all of you weren't in the court when we sang that one.
And it gets you moving.
And it gets you moving, and we have a little bit of time before opening worship.
Come, O Holy Spirit, set the church on fire. Strike it as the lightning hits opposing spire. Burn away the structures and consume the shell of holy systems, all in Jesus' name. I said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now. I said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now. Throw away the cobwebs of our stubborn past. Thoughts sent flying from us, fits unfit to last. Wind of change refresh us and disturb our calm. Teach us what true love is. By storm. I said, come, 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 in your hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now. I said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now. I said, come, come, come in Jesus' name. Take our hearts by storm. All the world lies open. Pentecost is now.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, we stay. We stay. 23.
I just couldn't.
By the way, I like your dress, so just for the record. What? Oh, I haven't seen that. But I feel like this is a movie I should watch so I can get those lines.
Played until my fingers bled on the summer of 16.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
We are called to be the church. To share stories of the good news and to counter loneliness with communities of love and hope. To proclaim to the world that in life, in death, not alone.
And so we say to the world, you are not alone. The embrace of holiness in the love of God. With all your relations, you, following Jesus, for you.
Song of peace. Song of peace. Of the journey, we're laying down our lives, lay them down in peace, lay them down, and take up His song, take up faith, and go into the world, take up His song of faith in every moment, of the journey. We're laying down our lives, lay them down in faith, lay them down, and take up His song. Take up His song of love, and go into the world. Take up His song of love in every moment of the journey. We're laying down our lives, lay them down in love, lay them down, and take up His song.
Business. We're going to begin with some gratitude and some thanksgivings. And I do want to just make a note that handing us you're going to sit in a meeting and see this beautiful area. And through the day, particularly on Thursday evening, I just had one of those wonderful create space, both here, ministry services, and through our. You have been gracious or not. We get and something we've forgotten, or you have through these 3 years been are open to you, as it says in Romans. You that presence here, and I. Takes place conference for some people to come here. It is part of the but for all of those who are giving up a beautiful of the, I can assure you.
I'm Nicholas Butler, and side of Team Ranch, and of course Youth at Conference, as well as a mission trip to Nicaragua planned. I'd like to be a commissioner involved in the decision making within the church. Thank you.
Good morning and guests. My name is Tracy Odell of Church. Ever since I saw a sign invites you to come to church to be made at times, which is why I'm talking to you by video today, which I really would have preferred to do. Many times I've had the church from the perspective of a person with a disability, being cured, or I heard little faith to cure ourselves, or worse, could not be loved by God the way we were. While I know people with disabilities,
At the bottom of the page, to the alternates that's needs. Okay, sure.
This to you, you'll have it. And at this time, we Toronto Settlement and Pastoral Relations Committee.
Andy Colmar is the chair of Settlement and Pastoral Relations and couldn't be here this morning due to something happening on his pastoral chart here at the celebration service. So he brings his regret. The Settlement and Pastoral Relations Committee day, And then, so they've been very active. Requests for take form after an interview committee has done its work throughout the conference. So they've been a faithful crew, and very grateful for them. And been settled on the pastoral charge. They're listed there. And then on page 9 and 10, 11, and 12, those are changes, transfers within the conference and outside of the conference. So people coming in and people leaving. Call. No. Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
And so at this time, we're going to move to the conference stability. We did only receive one, and so it was to the conference executive secretary.
Asking for our incorporated ministries and the actual today, because Linda Gray, who has the greatest knowledge in the world, but particularly about that, to the questioner, but also to include what areas of to look in the minutes to see that.
We didn't schedule a break time, so we're having a break time right now. 15 minutes. Come back at 10:15. I just was looking at this one. When's the break?
Take up his song, John.
This isn't a scheduled break, so we never thought about that.
Take up his song.
How am I going to get them back in if you all don't sing?
It's right here.
Thank you.
Take up his song. That's the song we want.
Are we waiting for
He can't hear me. Where's Elaine?
Take up his song of peace and go into the world. Take up his song of peace in every moment. In every moment of the journey, we're laying down our lives. Lay them down in peace, lay them down and take up his song. Take up his song of faith and go into the world. Take up his song of faith in every moment. In every moment of the journey, we're laying down our lives. Lay them down in faith, lay them down and take up his song. Take up his song of love and go into the world. Take up his song of love in every moment. In every moment of the journey, we're laying down our lives. Lay them down in love, lay them down and take up his song.
Are you okay, or do you want more?
Do I have to talk?
Are the results ready? Yeah, I've got them. It's just whether or not you want more to sing.
Can you do one more?
Let us build a house. Let us build a house, John. Let us build a house. Yep. Can you play this one, Brianne?
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive. Built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of praise. Here the love of Christ shall end division. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true, where all God's children dare to speak and dream God's reign anew. Here the cross shall stand as witness, as a symbol of God's grace. Here is one we carry the faith of Jesus. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where all are made their songs and visions heard, and love the treasure taught and plain as words within the word. Built of tears and cries and laughter, tears of faith and songs of praise. Let this house proclaim from floor to rafter. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place.
All right, folks, we're back. And if I can have your attention, we would like to give you the results of our ballot for General Council Commissioner. Thank you to the band for that impromptu song.
Yeah, I've tweeted to you about the kids in the US. Oh. Yeah. Just to denounce the policy of the United States of separating families and children until they see them in danger of the hands of human traffickers. Something simple. Well, I just feel that this is something that as a church,
That's okay.
well, I would initiate a letter writing campaign to the Canadian government to denounce it. Initiate a petition to well, I can see that. Well, that's what I'm questioning. Like, what can we do? Yeah, I'll see what I can find. And then that would be really okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Give me about 20 minutes. Oh, yeah, no. Okay, just let me know. Okay.
All right.
There's no mics. Okay, if we can have your attention, and for those out in the foyer, if they can make their way back in. We have the results from the ballots that were cast.
So the remaining lay commissioner, whose name will go on the slate, is Sarah Jane Wedelainen.
I'd like to recognize Mike 2.
Yeah, I'm Barry Reeder, point of personal privilege from Southwest Presbytery. I don't know about you, but I was really torn around how to put one name on that ballot. I think that each candidate had different kind of qualities, and recognizing that the leadership that they're wanting to bring to the United Church, I would like to propose that the other three candidates, that we cover the costs, if they chose to, go as observers. So they wouldn't be able to go as voting members for this conference, but they could go and participate and mingle and influence the court in ways that they could. So that would be, I'd like to make a motion to propose that. And Admiral Las Bonas would like to second that. So,
Admiral Los Baños from Southwest Presbytery. I second the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I'll get my voting card.
At this time, I would invite discussion or questions about that. All right, then I'm just going to call for the vote. If you are in favor of that, please indicate. Any opposed? The motion is carried.
No, I think that's it.
So at this time, I asked for someone to make a motion to destroy the ballots. Betty Lou.
I'm looking right at Betty
And
Lou. And are you seconding it? And
Brian. Yeah,
Brian?
Okay. The motion has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? You never know. Okay, thank you.
Motion is carried. The motion is carried.
So we now, our rosters for commissioners for from the conference level have been fulfilled. In the event that there becomes a position available at the conference level, we will go to the next person down and invite that person to step into that role.
So we actually need to pass the motion now for the
Right.
slate.
That's right. I'm
Yeah.
just,
Oh, but you're
just
done.
informing them. That's- I feel like I'm at home.
And there's two of us.
I know. Can I get on with it?
I bet you wish David was back.
So the motion is printed before you with the full slate there. That moved by myself, seconded by Jessica Stevenson, at the 94th general meeting of Toronto Conference of 218, elected as commissioners for the 43rd meeting of General Council 218, the following persons: Mel Stenson, Colin Phillips, Sarah Jane Whitlillen, and Nicholas Foster, Maya Bathright. And these are the individuals that have been selected. That's been moved, it's been seconded. Are there any further comments? Okay. President?
Hearing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Okay, we'll go to the B. That at the 94th annual meeting of Toronto Conference, elected as commissioners to the 43rd meeting of General Council, the following persons as nominated by the Toronto Southeast Presbytery within the Toronto Conference: Sharon Allsworth, Hetty Baker-Graff, Cynthia O'Connor, Martha Curlin, Emily Gordon, and Deborah Snyder. Those are the nominations for Toronto Southeast Presbytery. It's been it's been moved and seconded. All in
favor?
I'll leave that to you. Right. Okay.
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
And the alternates for those nominated through Toronto Southeast Presbytery, the 94th annual meeting of Toronto Conference approved the vacancies in the Presbytery nominated list of elected commissioners to the 43rd meeting of General Council be filled by referring to the following list of persons nominated as alternates by Toronto Southeast, and Lennon Reed James and Ann Hepburn. It's been moved and seconded.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Okay. So, just a time of celebration to say that God has been good and God is good. Always. That's right. Always. And we thank those individuals who have put their name forth and who have shared their gifts with the wider church as being commissioners for the 43rd General Council. Let's take a moment in prayer as we lift these individuals up. Holy One, with your gracious gift of love and compassion, you have a way of nudging us into places to serve your mission and your vision to your community. The individuals who have put their name forth and been nominated, we are thankful for the time that they have gifted to your cause and your vision. Surround them with your spirit, engage them with your voice, and anoint them with your wisdom as they represent the wider people of your church. Amen. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. At this time, we will move to speaking again about our proposals and accomplish time travel here in Toronto Conference by taking us back to the moment last night where we stopped. We had a couple of people. We were dealing with PGC number 3, an urgent call for peace accord in the Korean Peninsula. I believe that's on page 89. And we had just finished questions for clarification, and we're about to move to some questions of some discussion on the matter. And we called time and stopped for the evening for a good rest for our bodies and souls. And so I'm going to ask Jody to name who was, she noted who was at those microphones, and give them the opportunity to come back to the microphone to take their place and to let the discussion continue.
Madam Chair, may I update just a couple of things? Some changes since last night?
Yes.
So you may notice if you watch television or internet, since the cancellation of the summit between Mr. Trump and the North Korean leader a couple of days ago, they have resumed their dialogue in order to meet on the scheduled day. So that's one thing. And yesterday, the leader of South Korea and North Korea met again at Panmunjom in order to ignite the light of peace in the Korean Peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you.
So when we broke last night, Bright Yun was at microphone 1 and Betty Lou McNabb was at microphone 2 if they wish to take that opportunity.
Microphone 2. Is this 2? That's you. Oh, sorry, Betty Lou, that's you. I can see it, you can't.
So as I was saying last night, Betty Lou McNabb from Georgina Island First Nation Pastoral Charge. Sung Min, I think I wanted to speak to you and let you know that I am in support of your proposal. And I think it goes back to the question that Jody and the chair had reminded us about. Is the issue important enough for the national church to address? And I believe that peace in the Korean Peninsula is.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Hae-bin Jung from Toronto Southeast Presbytery. United Church has worked hard for the Israel-Palestine issues for a long time. And I believe that Korean issue is also as important as Israel-Palestine issues. So we need to talk this peace talk. So as a Korean United Church minister, I'm very thankful for this proposal and I support fully this proposal. We need to support this peace talk. We have to keep in mind, this peace talk is not surrender talk, it's a peace talk. And North Korea recently shut down permanently nuclear test site. I think this is a very good sign. So I hope United Church support this peace talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Joyce McKinnon, Northern Waters Presbytery. In 2008, I had an opportunity to travel to Seoul, Korea to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the Women's Association there. I went as a representative of our national UCW. While we were there, I had an opportunity to travel up to Panmunjom to see where the treaty had been signed. But you know what struck me so much was to see a huge train station which had been built in hope that the rail line would soon be opened to go to the north. It's larger than Union Station and sits empty. Going across the railroad track was a large fence. Poked into that fence were notes, gifts for both sides, where families had left gifts in hope. The women of the Women's Association over there, one day a week, put the money that they would use for lunch into a fund that would go to the people in the north to help to feed them. I have never seen so much hope in my life as I saw with those people in Korea, that they would soon be joined again, that they would have peace, that they would be with their families again. They count on the United Church. They were so happy to see we were there. They said, bring our message back to your people. Thank you for being here. So I would very much vote in favor of sending this forward.
Microphone 2.
Paul Shepard, Southwest Presbytery. My story isn't nearly as traumatic, it's much more local, but my congregation doesn't know until they hear right now that I wanted to be doing ministry in Rexdale because Rexdale is such a lousy part of Toronto, and therefore this is where we need to have churches to engage. And when I think about this proposal, when people say, but there's no churches in North Korea, well, that's why we should be there. And the fact that it's by invitation only, I have no concerns that it will be done safely and responsibly, but I would speak in favor of the motion because we have to be the place that we're not.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Hi, I'm Hannah Lee. I'm from Nob Hill United Church, Toronto Southeast Presbytery. So I'm standing here both as a Canadian, as someone with Korean roots, and someone who's a United Churchian who's very proud of our social justice heritage and our willingness to go out and venture into different places to support our neighbors, our friends all around the world. And I also stand as your chosen delegate to the World Council of Churches, which met in South Korea a couple of years ago in Busan. And at the time, the hope was that it would be led both by North and South Korean representatives of the churches in both North and South Korea. And unfortunately, at the time, at the very last moment, we heard that they weren't able to attend. There are Christians in North Korea. There are theologians. And in fact, the United Church was trying to arrange a gathering of North and South Korean women theologians for them to meet here in Canada in neutral territory for the first time in 30 years. Unfortunately, that also fell through. But my hope is that we can stand, not only offer our thoughts and prayers, but stand in solidarity and to really do what we can in terms of prayerful action and to speak our voice into the world. In the World Council of Church. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I think you are ready to vote. So all of those in, oh, wait, hold up. I should have said anyone else who needs to go to the microphone. So, microphone 2.
Dong Chun-so, Southwest Presbytery. 100% I support the proposal. But regarding the how might the United General Council respond to the issue, to deliver our message for peace in the the Korean Peninsula through collected voices of faith communities, I just want to go through number A. Instead of join other global partners, that's quite an inactive kind of a way. So rather, I'd like to suggest urge, not join, and also add WCC before the other global partners. So urge WCC and other global partners to work for peace, justice, and reunification in the Korean Peninsula. And then number B, it says advocate and the following. And before advocate, words advocate, I'd like to add through the Council of Churches in United States of America, South and North Korea. And then we advocate the following sentence may follow. And then number C, there's a bracket after America. Actually, this signing, amicus sign was done by North and United States, not by South Korean. Just one more time, one more thing. F, instead of overseas personnel, we need former delegate from the United Church to the South Korea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will take a note of those changes, yeah? And maybe if you could give us that list as well, okay?
So just to clarify again, we can't change the wording of the proposal, so we can only include these as recommendations if we decide to send the proposal forward. So we also received some recommendations when we first talked about this proposal last night. Just so that folks know what's happening behind the scenes, we have folks at the back of the room who are carefully capturing all of your recommendations. And when the moment is right, they will magically appear on the screen so that we can make sure that they represent what has been said, and then we can determine whether they are in fact recommendations that we wish to forward to the General Council. So I would suggest, like Dong-Chun, you had yours written down, is that correct? It might be helpful if you wouldn't mind running them back to Karen Hilfman-Milson back there, because you had a number of very specific ones, and we want to make sure we capture them accurately. Thanks. No? You have someone at the mic.
Microphone 1.
Okay, Amy Lee from the Southwest Presbytery. We had gathered together the Korean ministers after the meeting, and we have one voice. And the section E, and we talk about the mission and partnership in United Church of Canada, and also just for the including recommendation as when North Korean, right? When North Korea churches they invite us, and we will go. We are ready to go, and please give us a good support. Thank you.
Thank you. I just am asking Jody to clarify what needs to happen around these recommendations.
So what I would suggest, because we've had a number of recommendations, that we'll do this one similar to what we did with PGC number 1. First, we will consider the motion about whether we agree with forwarding the proposal, whether we agree with the proposal, and then if that passes, then we will put the recommendations up and we can determine what are the recommendations we want to attach to it. Does that make sense?
Okay, and just realize that we have folks typing those recommendations up so that you can see them. So at this time, we will consider the motion. Sorry, we're just going to get it up on the screen for you. Is that?
So yes, are we able to have, that's the one. Can we have the motion for that one up, please? I just need to move everything to where it belongs. Give me 2 secs and we'll go.
Okay.
So it will be moved by myself and seconded by Brian Ransom that Toronto Conference agrees with the proposal titled An Urgent Call for Peace Accord in the Korean Peninsula.
All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried.
So are we ready to have those recommendations up? We're not ready to have them.
Well,
so if
then
we can
here's
just
what
pause
we're going
for
to
a
do.
moment.
We actually received from Saskatchewan Conference today. Saskatchewan Conference also is meeting and also was talking about this and has sent to us a request to pray for peace on the Korean Peninsula and sent us a prayer. This was actually forwarded to us by Catherine Christie, who is the person who retired out of the United Church position in Korea, in South Korea. So I'm inclined that we that Sungmin has agreed to join with me. He will pray in the Korean language, and I will pray in the English language. We in the United Church, if we have a fault, I would say that our fault is that we like to talk about what we're going to do and then we forget to pray. And my understanding of faith is that you pray for things to change and then you work for it to happen. So one of the gifts that, from my experience, when we went to visit our brothers and sisters and all of our relations in the PROK, is that we prayed with them. And they pray a lot. And we prayed with them at 5 in the morning. I attended a unification prayer service. And one of the most wonderful things about that is that it was in Korean. And we are in the season of Pentecost, folks. And so you don't need to understand every single word in order to prayer, in order to be in prayer with people. So I would ask you to join me. Okay? So let us pray. God of peace,
평화의 하나님,
you reconcile with us in Christ and break down the dividing walls between people.
예수 그리스도를 통해 우리와 화해하시고 사람들 사이에 막힌 담을 허무시는 하나님.
Today we remember our sisters and brothers in the Korean Peninsula and unite our voices with them in prayer.
오늘 우리는 한반도에 살고 있는 남과 북의 형제자매들을 기억하며 우리의 마음을 모아 기도합니다.
We remember the Korean people, united as one nation for 5,000 years, who have been forcibly separated from each other by external forces in the wake of colonial occupation and the devastation of the World War.
반만년의 역사를 지닌 한민족은 식민 지배와 세계 전쟁의 상흔으로 70년이라는 긴 세월 동안 남북으로 나뉘어 서로 대립하며 살아왔습니다.
They have been divided and set against one another for 70 years, hurting each other, living in fear, resentment, and brokenness.
70년간 동족 간 서로가 서로에게 상처를 주고 분노와 두려움에서 자유로울 수 없었던 이들의 삶을 불쌍히 여기소서.
Have mercy on us, O God. Help them overcome division and confrontation. Walk beside them as they take each step toward peace and harmony. Pour out your spirit on world leaders, politicians, communities, and average people. May they resolve their differences not with weapons, but through dialogue and negotiation, that the Korean people may find the way toward a common good and well-being of all.
이제 분열과 대립을 넘어 평화와 화해의 시대로 나아가려는 이들의 걸음걸음을 인도하시고 힘을 붙돋아 주옵소서. 개인과 시민사회 정치가와 세계 지도자들에게 평화의 영을 불어넣으시어 무력보다 대화와 협상으로 문제를 해결하고 모두에게 선이 되는 공동 번영의 길로 나아가도록 이끌어 주옵소서.
We also pray for those suffering from war and violent conflict around the world, remembering people in Israel, Palestine, Syria, and the Middle East, and the millions of refugees displaced from their homes due to conflict and violence.
우리는 또한 전쟁과 갈등으로 고통받고 있는 전 세계 많은 사람들을 위해 기도합니다. 이스라엘과 팔레스틴 땅에서 또한 시리아와 중동 지역에서 오랜 갈등과 폭력으로 살던 터전에서 내몰리고 난민으로 살아가는 수많은 사람들을 위해서 기도합니다.
Inspire and encourage us, O God, that the global community work together, not for the interests of politic and economic elites or the military-industrial complex, but for the equality, human dignity, and peaceful coexistence.
세계 공동체가 정치 군사적 이익이 아닌 생명 존중과 평화 공존의 가치를 위해 함께 노력해 가도록 우리를 깨우치시고 인도해 주소서.
Help us, O God, to stay alert and keep praying, to follow the way of Jesus, to embrace with courage the spirit of truth, freedom, and peace, as witnesses to your presence and your work among us. In Jesus' name we pray.
예수의 제자된 우리들이 항상 깨어 기도하게 하시고 역사 가운데 임하시고 또 우리 가운데서 일하시는 진리 자유 평화의 영이신 하나님의 성령을 따라 용기 있게 나아가게 하소서. 예수 그리스도 이름으로 기도합니다. 아멘.
Amen.
Thank you.
Now, we are going to go back to our recommendations of that same proposal. And just to clarify, so what we're asking you is if you would like sorry, I'm trying not to go back into old language, I almost said transmit, but to forward this with these recommendations. We're just waiting for them to go up. I will also ask that this prayer that was forwarded to us would go on our website. It's on Facebook, but if you're not on Facebook, thank you. All right.
Oh, there they are.
There they are. And again, this is the largest print that we can get to you and still be able to make changes. So
do you want me to read them?
So I will ask Jody to read them.
So currently, it would be moved by myself and seconded by Brian Ransom that we recommend that we acknowledge what the United Church already does and want more of in items A and B, that in item E, the language needs to say, at the request of North Korea, that in item A, we urge the World Council of Churches and other global partners, and that item A we include to work for peace, justice, and reunification in the Korean Peninsula. Can I just make a suggestion?
Yes.
To make our lives
Yes.
easier?
Yes.
I would like to suggest, because this is a lot of wordsmithing, that perhaps we move on to the next proposal and we ask someone to incorporate all of these changes into that particular section so that as a court we can see what the changes would end up saying, and that we come back to this proposal. Would that make sense for you?
So just a reminder that we did move that proposal, so that has been. And what we're talking about is what recommendations we want to send. But we do want that to be clear for people. So we will work to do that. Are you warm or cool to that idea? You're warm. All right, you're warm. You're warm enough for me. So we will do that. Who is going to do that?
Is that something that we can ask you to do because we'll have some time while we look at the next proposal? Okay, so yes, so our wordsmith fairies at the back will work on this, and I've actually had a request that going forward, if you are thinking about making recommendations with respect to any of the proposals, if you would take a moment to write them down and take them back to where Karen Hilfman-Milson is sitting at the back, it will make our process much smoother. So thank you for that. The next proposal was one. Yes, sorry, this one. Do you want me to explain why?
Sure, I'll just tell you. Our next proposal is going to be number 91, PGC number 5, and Jody will explain to you why we've skipped 4.
Yeah, so because we received 2 new business proposals that are on a similar topic, and I spoke with the representative who will be presenting from the Presbytery, we're going to put the next of the proposals, which we would have been looking at, which was PGC 4. We're going to save that to consider with the 2 on new business. So we're going to move on to the one on the social gospel theology, and we will come back to it.
And so I would ask the presenter to come forward. Either the ramp or the stairs, whatever you're comfortable with.
Good morning. I've been listening with great eagerness and interest in the discussion on the previous proposal, because I think the way it was expressed and handled addresses some of the issues in my proposal. My name is Barbara White, and I'm a member of Southeast Presbytery, retired ministry personnel. For 6 years, I was member of GCE, and as a part of that, I took part in the working group to work on policy regarding Israel-Palestine. That was the most difficult work I have ever done in the church. It raised issues for me that have been percolating all these years since, because that report came out in 2012. And it was only after I retired that I really had room in my head to think about it more clearly. And this proposal is the result of that thinking and praying and reflecting. People have said to me, Barb, this is really weird. What are you on about? Ministry personnel have said that to me. Lay people have said that to me. So I'm hoping that maybe in these 2 minutes left, I can speak to some of those feelings. I really affirm the history of the United Church in speaking out on social issues that arose from the social gospel, and I'm trusting that you've all read my proposal so that you know what I'm talking about there. But I think that in the year 2018, we need to do some refining on what it means to speak out into the public space. I think we're being asked in this day and age not to come into the public space with answers, but to come in with the offering of a place in which discussions can happen and a broad invitation as to who would be around the table, and with the perspective that the best answer, not the only answer, or maybe what you might think is the right answer, but the best answer for that moment will come from the middle of that table. If you're wondering why I went so much into theology, that's partly because, we were asked to do that. There's a new template for proposals, gave headings about what was to be covered. I have addressed every heading. Mine is the only proposal that did that. Many seem to just pass over the ones they didn't want to have a look at, but I had a look at all of them because I felt they all directly pertained to the message that I wanted to impart. And so what I'm asking for is an opportunity for people in the many, many different spaces within the United Church to be given opportunity and materials with which they could discuss how is the most appropriate way to speak out in 2018 while respecting our social gospel roots. Photo finish.
All right, and so as we have been following as a process, I will invite you to take some time in your table groups to come up with any questions that you may have for clarification or around the issue before we move to microphone time.
I'm just going to go get my water.
Oh, okay. And we had an extra chair, but we'll get you. you. Hi. Thank you. That's been 5 minutes. Do you need more time? Yes? Yeah? Okay, I'll give you another 5. If you don't, then just talk about the weather. You're Canadian. You can never tell, right? But if somebody says they need more time, it's 10 minutes. There you go. I know, I do think this saves microphone time. I'd rather cut off microphone time than table time, right? Like I'd be more inclined to say, okay, enough. Right? Yeah, well, no, it's always good, right? Right? That's true. Yes, right. But this is a good one because people look at it and go, well, what could that possibly sound like? What are you doing? But then you read it. Yeah. Wow, a lot of people read it and still felt that way. You can't win them all, right? That's right. I'm going to give you 1 more minute, and then we'll move to questions for clarification. I'm going to ask you to bring your table group discussions to an end, and anyone who has a question for clarification coming out of those discussions, if you would make your way to a microphone. Microphone 3.
Ross Leckie, Northern Waters. I'm probably using old language, but I think we should, yes, send this proposal on.
That was not the end of your time.
I thought it was your friend.
I paid a lot of money to that person to.
Did you?
Please continue.
Anyway, in old language, I would see that we have a department and sometimes a staff person entrusted with theology and faith nationally. And so I'm not clear as to whether, and I'm focusing on number 3 on page 96 as the kind of action, it says main action, that will hopefully happen into the future. So I'm not clear whether the proposal is saying we need to have still a Office of Theology and Faith and it being staffed. And if that's what's being said, yes, indeed, we should have it happen.
Yes, I agree, Ross. When I was writing the proposal, the Theology and Faith Committee, for some reason, didn't enter my mind, but since then it has, and I thought that's really the appropriate place for this to be carried forward.
Excellent, thank you. Microphone 2.
Hi, Maya, Living Waters. So my main question is, what is the issue? I'm looking at the proposal, and the question is, what is the issue? And then the answer is what we believe. And I think that we would have more clarification as to how the United Church may respond if you actually tell us what is the issue, like what is the problem that we are responding to.
Right. I think at the core of the, well, I guess you've called it a problem. I'll call it a problem. I would prefer to call it an issue.
Issue or a concern.
A
we can call
concern.
it whatever we want to call it,
Okay.
but I still would like the question is, what are we responding to?
I think we're responding to an approach in the social gospel that had tremendous meaning and tremendous benefit when it was developed in the late 1800s and through into the 20th century. But to me, the concern is that we are living in a very different context than was the case at that time with our multi-faith society, many people not proclaiming faith of any kind. And so how to be church and raise issues within that context, I feel, needs to be updated. And I think the way that our moderator, Gary Patterson, approached the how the church would engage medical assistance in dying provided a really good model of what I'm seeing, which was to say, let's offer a space and a place where people can gather. The church at that time did not advocate for one side or the other of that issue, but rather offered a space where people could meet and determine on their for themselves what they felt. Does that help?
Not really. I would like
Okay.
to still have, so I think planning out how we are going to make a proposal, I would still like to know, like, clearly what the issue is, like what the church is not doing, being laid out for us.
Okay.
Because I understand social gospel. You've listed professors that taught me at Emmanuel College and books that I've read, and I understand all of this, but I still don't know where the proposal, where it's being drawn out of. That's so just more clarity is what
Okay.
I'm asking for.
Okay. Well, I guess it's been my feeling over the many, many years that I've been part of the church is that there have been many times, and it continues into today, where I felt that some of the initiatives coming from the church were too one-sided, that didn't invite enough people to the table of discussion. If you want a current example, I would say, and this isn't just a church issue, but a Canadian issue with the pipeline debate, but in the church, we have many faithful members who have worked in the oil patch for all of their lives and have been tremendously hurt by some of the work coming out of the United Church. I'm not suggesting that their voice should dominate, but I think that their voice needs to be included more intentionally than is what is happening at this moment. I hope that's specific enough. I don't know where she went.
Microphone 1.
Mel Stenson, Southeast Presbytery. It seems like this proposal invites us to reflect theologically in our future actions, and it could be an overachieving theme for the next 3 years. But what is the actual plan of action for this proposal?
Proposals were not necessarily invited for action this time around. They did invite proposals for conversation. And so this proposal fits into that. And the action that I've described and that Ross helped me to refine would be that it would be referred to the Theology and Faith Committee of the United Church to study it themselves and then find a way of reaching out to all the different spaces in the church with an opportunity to engage this slightly altered way of being. Jody, would you add anything to that, or? No, okay.
I believe I'm going to microphone 2. I think you were there long.
Ella Taylor Walsh, Toronto Southeast. Our table were confused about, and I'm even more confused listening. Now, are we talking about basically a theological discussion to talk about how our faith is now engaging us in relation to other people in our society in social issues? Or are we talking about the more practical, how do we relate to other people? So my question is, it's not clear. The concern is clear, but the articulation of it, the focus of it, is not really very clear. And some of what I thought I was hearing clarity, and then the next things you said kind of contradicted that. So I'm still no clearer. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Nina Fulford, Living Waters Presbytery. As I understood it, and by the way, at our table there was a sense of great respect for anything that Barb was bringing forward.
Thank you.
But I see it as asking for a really deep study of an essential part of the foundations of our United Church faith, which has, over time, taken up the social gospel. That's not wrong, but I think we have sometimes done it at the expense of the other aspects of our faith. We have a tendency to act and pray later, and I say this as asking us to do the reverse and to invite people to discuss and think about our response to needs, issues, justice that are all around us. So yeah, the idea of making it through faith, theology and faith, and providing some resources, although we recognize there are so many resources coming out that we're not sure where it would fit on priorities, but it actually seems to me.
Thank you, Nina. You did a much better job of responding to Ella than I ever could have.
We are, my worry is it feels like we're getting a bit into the debate of the concept, which it's hard, sometimes very difficult to figure out which one is clarification, and so bear with me here. I'm just going to make that point, right, that we're doing that. I think we're going to 3, and then 1, and then 2. I think that's right. Okay.
Greg Daly, Northern Waters Presbytery. And I guess my clarification as well is this proposal about theology? Are we talking about who we fundamentally are as Christians? Is this proposal about looking at what the message of the social gospel is, or is it looking at who we are as Christians and how we engage within that? So to cut right to the chase, you're asking us to reflect theologically. You're asking us to reflect on who God is, whether or not God is an entity that we are to believe in. Are we asking to reflect theologically on how Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer informs our social gospel in the context of the diversity within which we live? Is that part of the proposal?
Yes.
Exactly, thank you.
Now there you go. Now that's a question for clarification. There we go. Where did I say we were going? 1.
Okay, thank you. Dorothy Mizzo, Northern Waters Presbytery. Again,
I think this is clarification because I just picked sort of three places that kind of bring it into focus for me. The very first, what is the issue? Looking for change in how we engage the community in justice work. And then a bit later, you say, we want people to be seen as loved children of God rather than problems to be dealt with. And then towards the end, and at the end of 4, I guess, on the last page, it's not about doing right, it's about being in right relationship. It's not about being correct, it's about being connected. And what you said about getting everyone around the table and the correct answer may not be what you feel is the right answer, but it will be the consensus. So I see that as the essence of what you're proposing. Is that correct?
It is, and I guess a little codicil I'd add to that is that when you enter into the circle in that way, you may be changed and you will learn.
I really don't know who was there first. Okay, I will go to 1. Thank you. I'll go to 1.
Hyuk Cho from Northern Waters Presbytery. I'm here to stand to support this proposal. We are living in a culturally pluralistic society. And the question for us as a faith community is that how we as a faith community to work with the other who may have same faith, may have different faiths, may have no faith, how we as a faith community work together with the other. So this is a critically important proposal to deal with as a faith community. So I'd like to wholeheartedly support this proposal to create a committee or subcommittee to discuss about this matter. Thank you.
Amen.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Number 2, vote Mike 2.
Brianne Swan, Living Waters Presbytery. Sort of following up on a little bit of what Maya said and what Greg said. And Greg actually quoted directly from the Song of Faith. So we have our series of faith statements in 25 and 40 and 68, and in 2006 we have the Song of Faith. And it seems to address some of the issues that you were talking about as a faith statement that was developed by the United Church. We've got a non-hierarchical understanding of a Trinitarian God, and we talk about being made in the image of God. It talks about being a people of God rather than the people of God. So what would this do that would expand upon what we already have going with the Song of a theological statement of the United Church?
I did study it again when I was working on this, and certainly affirm the Song of Faith in particular. I feel it does go one step farther in terms of the comments that I just made about us being changed. I don't see that in Song of Faith. But what this proposal does is it invites engagement all over the church for what I think it was Greg said, you know, just talking about your faith, and then how does that inform how you reach out. So a very intentional link.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Terry Davis, Living Waters Presbytery. I'm a newcomer to the United Church. I've only been here 10 years. And in 10 years, what I hear and feel is that we have an incredibly precise process for how the United Church will operate. From a theological point of view, it's open season, and we are depending on the things that have been produced over the past that say, here is our theology, and I would welcome this proposal when I saw it, because what it said was, it has to be a living, breathing, changing thing, and that could only happen by dialogue and discussion on a broad basis, and not by saying, here is the theology. So thank you.
Okay. In that world between clarification and now discussing this as a proposal that we want to move forward, I'm going to call on Jody to make to make a point about when we're talking about recommendations in case we get into that, because we are trying a new way of being, and as you know, when you try new habits, it's very easy to slip into some old habits, and so we're just going to point something out to you.
So what we've noticed is that in our recommendations, we are really getting into the word smithing, which is not what the General Counsel wanted. So we're really trying to capture what the word actually means, recommendations that might build on or enhance the proposal. And so as an example of how these are different, because it is really hard to sort of distinguish, I'm going to build on Ross's question when he asked for clarification, did you intend this to go to the Theology and Faith Committee? So if someone wants to make that as a recommendation now, don't try to figure out how to fit the words Theology and Faith Committee into item 3. Instead, make a recommendation that the Theology and Faith Committee be asked to give leadership in study and discussion. So we're not trying to get in and figure out how to make it fit with what's already written there. We're building on what's already written there. So as you're making recommendations, try to think of it that way. Don't try to fix what's already written. Just try to add to it, build on it separately.
Thank you. This time, if there are any, if there's any wisdom on the discussion of this proposal, I would invite folks to go to the microphone, to a microphone. Microphone 1. I mean 3.
I was going to say, is that me? Cameron Rowe, Southeast Presbytery. I am in full support of this. I think this is very phenomenally well done. I just would like to point to number 3, and I'm seeing this as a call to action. I know that was a question before of clarification, but I am definitely seeing this as a call to action, and I encourage members of the court to look at it that way. It does say the General Counsel would engage in conversation itself and produce resources. That is a call to action for the council. And it says, other spaces in the church to have their own conversation within their own group and then with other people in the community. That is a push for conversation in communities of faith. That is a push for community engagement. It is a call to action. So moving forward, like in recommendations later, I would like that to be a part of the conversation, but I also push the court to look at it in that lens because it is very phenomenally pushing the church to do something. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Dan Benson, Southeast Presbytery. In reading this, I think there's so much good content in this, and I want to thank you, Barb, because it's incredibly well thought out and a good exploration of the situation. I do echo some of the other comments that I find it really difficult to discern what the precise issue is and what the precise outcome and how we get there, the desired outcome. And I think by deferring this or directing it, if we can do that, to faith and interfaith studies, that would be the avenue that I would recommend. Because at this point, I don't understand it, but I think that's that comes in recommendations.
So you're saying that you would like to add a recommendation?
Yes, is this the right time?
I think that you could name it, and that way our writers could capture it.
So this be forwarded to, what's the correct term for
the Theology and
Faith and Interfaith.
Committee, no, it's, sorry.
Interchurch Interfaith. That's called
Thank
Interchurch
you.
and Interfaith this week.
Thank you. Well, actually, that models are trying to change
Theology.
the way we think and talk about our faith.
I would recommend this be forwarded to the right and appropriate committee.
Thank you. And we will make sure that we get that intent in there. Microphone 2.
Paul Shepard, Southwest. I'm wondering if I'm actually at the right meeting, because my part of the church and the table that I'm at, this is happening. I mean, what we saw yesterday around all the conversation on Aboriginal issues, complete understanding that the important thing is relationship. I was so impressed when Brian was making his presentation, how often people would say, who consulted with you? Who did you talk to? Were Aboriginal voices heard? And the answer very consistently yesterday was, well, of course. We're the United Church. We live in relationship already. So I'm not sure what the take home is. Instead of passing a motion like this, I think we should just get to work, because this is happening all over the place. And what I struggle to see in the proposal is anything that we're not already living out. But maybe this is a big region. Maybe the church, maybe other parts of the church are different.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Hi, Kirsty Hunter, Minising United Church. I speak in favor of this proposal. I feel it's a little bit like updating feminism from the suffragettes' understanding to our modern understanding and continuing to work on it. The only thing I would add as a recommendation is that there's some explicit reference to including as many voices as possible from throughout the United Church and beyond in this consultation process. Because sometimes we get a little inside baseball and we're gazing, and just to make sure that we're updating our theology with as much consultation as possible.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
I, too, am speaking in favor of the proposal. Barbara, I think you've done a fantastic job in putting this together. And in terms of rationale, I found it actually in the document. You know, we've moved from a place where social gospel was about us trying to fix them or trying to fix a situation into a reality, as our previous speaker just spoke to, where we are actively seeking to be engaging with one another in all of our conversations. And the proposals, I think, where we will find ourselves most at home as a church are those in which engage all the parties who are affected by it and involve that kind of conversational, relational listening, deep listening to one another. That is only possible if we come with open hearts and a willingness to be changed. So I appreciate that, and I think we do need to go to our theology of Trinity and realize, that's our grounding, that God, the Song of Faith, God is holy mystery, and then it lists all these Trinitarian kind of ideas for us, but it's all relational. It's not hierarchical. And so it's a call to the whole church. And I think we can forget, those of us who are kind of at the center of the universe, that we are a far-flung church. And not everyone is as engaged and aware of this kind of thinking and process as many of us are. So I think we have to be careful not to take that for granted. And I think this invites us to include all the far-reaching places of our church.
Oh, someone is on their way to microphone 3.
Lang Moffat, Southwest Presbytery. I think the social gospel needs review since 1925. Any policy, normally we like to review policies every 5 years or something to make sure that they're relevant as they were when they were originally written. But I do think the subject is a difficult one. It takes a lot of study. And so the recommendation to refer to the group to look into this and look at the social gospel in 1925 with making the conditions of the time and the understandings of the time. But we're now in 2018 in a very different world. And we need to update both our theological base for it and our subsequent influence, our actions as to how we implement our beliefs at that time. So I certainly would recommend that we refer it. I don't know whether there was a seconder for that proposal or not. If there isn't, I would certainly second that proposal so that over time, it's not something you're going to do in a week or two, or even in one day at a general council meeting, but to refer it so that the importance of the issue can be addressed in depth, involving all people as appropriate.
Thank you. I would interpret what the language you're using around refer to be very similar to the recommendation that it goes to the proper committee. Is that okay with you?
No, that's what I was trying to say.
Perfect.
I didn't hear anyone
I wanted to
seconding
make sure I wasn't
it.
saying something that you did not intend.
It needs looking at it in depth.
Thank you. Sorry. Microphone 2.
Hi, so it's Maya again. So I completely support this, even though I live within this confusion. And I would like to make a suggestion or a recommendation. Am I allowed to do that now?
Yep.
I don't know if every presbytery, every conference have social justice animators, but as the church is changing, I would like to suggest that every region, that General Council looks at having every region have a social justice animator or two to help in engaging in this work. So I know that we like to have committees and we like to study and we like to get together, but if we could actually have social justice animators throughout the country to actually engage with the different communities of faith, I think that would be something that could be added to this proposal as an action plan.
Okay, so as a recommendation that the General Council consider
one of the actions to have social justice animators. Does that make sense?
in each region.
Yeah, in each region.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
That will be in there. All right, folks, so we are going to move to voting. And as you remember, we will vote on the proposal, yes or no, and then we will deal with the recommendations that we have heard here. All in favor?
Oh,
wait, sorry, my bad.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You just wanted the words up there.
I just wanted the words up
Yeah,
there.
and that's a good idea.
So can we have PGC number 7? There it is.
So the motion by Jody Maltby, Brian Ransom, that the Toronto Conference agrees with the proposal entitled Rethinking and Updating the Social Gospel Theology. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And makes the following recommendations. Here are the recommendations that we heard. The appropriate General Council Committee be invited to give leadership to this work, to see it as a call to action, to include as many voices as possible throughout the United Church and beyond in the consultation, to remember that in many ways we are engaging in conversation and relationship already and need to keep building on this, and that every region have a social justice animator to help in engaging this work. So these are recommendations that you send to General Council for their consideration.
See how well that worked?
Right? Yes. I'm going to gauge that you're ready to vote on these recommendations, okay? All right. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. That was good discussion, folks. See how well that worked? Wow. Great. We're awesome.
I'd just like to add a word of thanks for the support. I see this as my life's work, and it feels like a tremendous affirmation that you got it and embraced it, and I'm very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I keep forgetting to give the speaker that last minute, so we're doing it after, but it's in there. Thank you. We are going to now, we've done a regrouping, going to go to number 4. Is that what I'm doing?
No, you're going to number 6.
No, I'm not. Sorry, my bad. Number 6.
Yeah.
Page 97, page 97, proposal to General Council, number 6. This is with reference to the manual and...
Is there a paper copy that I could...
Sorry, no, I'm trying to do the one on the boycott.
I'm sorry, did I come at the wrong time?
No, we called you, but...
My apologies. It's number 4.
It is 4.
Yeah, okay. My apologies. We are in fact going to number 4. 89, page 89, just to see if you're just keeping you awake, folks. Getting closer to lunch and...
For some reason, the numbering has gotten messed up in my thing. No, I think when I move them around, they get changed.
Yes. So I will call Susan Eagle. Although there are a couple of other petitions with regard to the same issue, we're just going to deal with this one right now. PGC number 4, titled Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Against Israel. That's not the same as that.
Yeah,
What's going on?
For some reason, the numbering is different.
We just need to clarify the numbering in the book. Okay. I think I'm working from an old copy. I'm not sure I'm making this mistake. My apologies to you. Okay, okay. No, okay, it's not my mistake. So it should say PGC number 4, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. Excellent.
Thank you, Madam President. This has been in front of Living Waters Presbytery for more than a year. And this came from Collier United Church Board. I don't believe that there is anyone from Collier Street United Church to speak to it. There is one lay representative here who has chosen not to speak to it because she is not in support of the motion coming from Collier. So this passes now to us at the Presbytery because we have taken action on it. In bringing this to you, I want to quickly just identify the action taken by our Presbytery. First of all, this was received through our Community Connections and Right Relations Commission. We chose to meet with the board of Collier Church to understand better their concerns, to be respectful. We discovered that this had come to them through, that it was a sympathetic response to one member of the congregation, that they had not spent a lot of time with the United Church documentation, and we encouraged them to do that and to review that. In terms of the reason that our Presbytery is recommending that there not be support for this motion, I'm going to identify 4 areas that were of concern in wording. First, in their material, they commented that we ought not to have the General Counsel speaking on our behalf on political issues unnecessarily. Our feeling was that this was an issue that the United Church needed to speak on, that for many years the United Church has had a history of speaking on issues, and we have just had a conversation about the deep roots we have in social justice and the social gospel. Another comment in their material is that the General Counsel creates an unfortunate pastoral challenge by moving into this area. Our feeling is that the unfortunate challenge was created by those who created illegal settlements in Palestine, that we are responding to that. In terms of the action that's identified, I'm referring to 2 documents that the United Church has put out. One is the question and answer on unsettling goods. The other is the document, Let's Keep Talking About Palestine and Israel. The United Church action that was recommended through General Counsel was that we pray, choose, speak for peace in Palestine, engage in a range of actions that support a just peace, including joining in worship, prayer, study, taking economic action. So a Collier motion only identifies one of the things that is in a broad range of activities recommended, and thus kind of skews the action of the United Church, misrepresents the broad range of response the United Church is calling for. The motion also calls for us to retract a boycott against the state of Israel, its people, and its businesses. Again, that's a misnomer. The United Church action is not directed at the state of Israel, but clearly in the United Church documentation it says this focuses on illegal settlements in Israel, and even for economic action, it's against the products created in those illegal settlements. It is not boycotting all products from Israel, not even boycotting companies that carry those materials, but only those particular ones. And can I finish my last point?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The 4th point is that the document suggests that we are aligning the United Church with unsavory bedfellows, identifies Hamas and Hezbollah. In fact, we are aligned with the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice. In the question and answer document that the United Church put out, it lists the many churches across the world, including the World Council of Churches, who have also taken action on this. So again, our concern in accepting this was that it creates misinformation about the role of the United Church, the action the United Church has taken, the action the United Church is encouraging congregations to take. So for all those reasons, we are suggesting that this not be accepted and not be forwarded to General Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you. We're just going to take a pause, and I'm going to just ask Jody about the way forward for this. Do we in terms of what we need to do, because our motions are positive motions, right? That's where, sorry.
Yeah, so if you want to take the action that is being requested by the presbytery, then you would defeat both motions. You would defeat the motion to agree with the proposal, and you would defeat the motion to forward the proposal with disagreement.
I'm going to give you 2 minutes to discuss it. I'm mindful of my timing, and I do need to go back to my recommendations. So 2 minutes to discuss it, and then I'm going to see where you're at.
Did that cover it? Geez, 3 minutes is not much time.
And that's why I was like, because otherwise it was just going to be a point of clarification anyway. So.
Yeah. Because there may be questions. Are you taking questions?
Okay. All right, folks, I'm going to interrupt your time. And I would like to know the wisdom of the court, the temperature of the court, warm or cool. Are you prepared to go right to the question around this or do you need some clarifications and things? If you are warm to the idea of going right to the question, indicate so. If you're cool to that idea, indicate. I think you're pretty warm to that idea. Okay. So, just to make it clear, Jody.
So if you do not, so the motion is by myself, seconded by Brian Ransom, that Toronto Conference agrees with the proposal entitled Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Against Israel. So if you do not want this to succeed, you would not vote in favor.
Right. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is defeated. And now...
So the second motion by myself, seconded by Brian Ransom, is that while Toronto Conference does not agree with the proposal entitled Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Against Israel, but is passing it on to the General Council for further consideration. So if you do not want to pass this proposal on, you will not vote in favor. If you want to pass the proposal on, you will vote in favor.
All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is defeated. Thank you.
For taking such
Thank you.
gracious defeat.
Yes, there you go. We are now going to move back to our recommendations around the proposal number 3, an urgent call for the peace accord in the Korean Peninsula. And those recommendations are on the screen. And I will read them for you. So as you will recall, or to remind you, we have in fact passed this piece of the urgent call on. We agreed to do that. And so at this time... We also rephrased them so they were not... Okay. And we have rephrased them so that they weren't as direct to our concern about wordsmithing. And so I would read these recommendations to you. We acknowledge that the United Church is actively involved in South Korea and encourage our work with our partners to increase. That we join with global partners, including the World Council of Churches, in this work. That we acknowledge and advocate for the importance of peace talks throughout the Council of Churches in the USA and North and South Korea. That we consider sending delegates instead of overseas personnel. That any United Church of Canada overseas personnel going to North Korea do so at the request of North Korean churches. Does that feel? Yes? Right? Does that feel right? Can you just warm cool me here for feel right? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Then I'm going to call for the question. If you, all those in favor of those recommendations? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you for your work there. We're moving on.
Yeah, so we need to do a motion that all unfinished business.
It's only 10-2.
Oh, do you want to move on to another proposal?
Do you think we're going to get through one? We are just taking a moment here because we are 10 minutes to our next order of the day. I'm not really sure that's time for any other proposals.
The next one would be the Rosedale.
Oh, but we're going to try, okay? Because the next one is number 6. No, is number 6? I really want to talk about number 6, apparently. The next one is number 6 on page 97. And this is with regard to a change for a manual.
If there is a paper copy, because this might die.
From Rosedale United Church.
So I'm switching hats a little bit right now. My name is Brianne, and I serve with the Living Presence Ministry, which is in Living Waters Presbytery. But I am also a member currently of Rosedale United Church in Southeast Presbytery. And as nobody, the people who authored this proposal were not able to be here, so I am speaking on behalf of Rosedale right now. So currently, regardless of the size of a congregation, it takes only 10 signatures to initiate presbytery involvement and a mandatory meeting. And so what happened in Rosedale last year, or in 2015, was that in a congregation with a roll approximating 500 people, 10 people were able to initiate a formal review of our pastoral relationship with our clergy, with our lead minister. And so what this proposal is asking is that rather than a number being assigned to the number of signatures needed to initiate such a review, that it be a percentage of the total roll on the congregation. And yeah, so I'm only hesitating because it feels like there should be more to say to that in this, but that is essentially what it is. It is asking that General Council amend a piece of the manual that shifts the number of signatures needed to a percentage of the roll.
Okay. Are there questions for clarification to that? I know I'm skipping your table group time, but I am trying to, I think we can skip it on this one. Are there questions for clarification about that? Oh, I always like to give time for people to make their way. So, microphone 3.
Whoops, sorry. Rick McKinley from Living Waters Presbytery. Does the number in your percentage, Brianna, include just members or members and adherents?
Pardon? So we're not asking anything specifically about members and adherents currently in the kind of vote that this triggers members, it's only members who are allowed to vote. So my understanding would be that this would just pertain to members because that is how the current system is.
Okay.
Any other questions for clarification? Microphone number 2.
Betty Lou McNabb, Living Waters Presbytery. Brianne, just so I understand in my thinking, with a membership of 500 people, if it was 10%, then you would have had to have 50 signatures to make this whole process go where it went. That's right?
Hypothetically, if this...
We're at 10%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I saw microphone 3.
And conversely, if there are only 10 members, one person.
Yes, thank you.
I love math.
Right? Yeah. We're doing it all here at Toronto Conference. Microphone number 1.
Martha Turkile from Southeast, but and mine's the same question.
Yes.
It's a real question. I mean,
Yes,
if you
I
had
see.
50,
I understand
would
what you're
it be 5?
saying.
Yeah.
Because the percentage has an impact about how many people can initiate that as well.
Or did Rosedale mean 10 or 10%? Whichever.
Okay.
Consider a
That's your
minimum
clarification.
threshold of 10% be required.
So they did mean a minimum threshold of 10%. They did not mean a minimum number of 10 in any way. A complete change from number to percentage. Microphone 3.
Roseanne Veeder, Southwest Presbytery. So if we wanted to add a minimum number, how do we do that?
You would make a recommendation.
Okay. All right.
So I'd like to make a recommendation.
When we get to the discussion.
Yeah, and just, okay. Which we'll move to right now, so don't go away, because there's nobody else asking for clarification. Am I right? So we'll move to discussion. Back to microphone number 3.
So in support of changing a number to a percentage, I'd like to also to add that there'd be a minimum number of people to initiate the change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the recommendation would be that in addition, that there would be a minimum number of people.
So you're
without
not
naming that number yourself, right?
I'd like to name 5.
Okay.
As
All right. So 5 or 10 or percentage. Remember, we don't have to solve this whole problem, and what we're doing is moving this to General Council, and they can figure out some of those practicalities. Microphone 2.
Ella Taylor Walsh, Toronto Southeast Presbytery. I see the point of the proposal.
Folks, sorry, my apology, ma'am. Someone's at the mic. Please give them your attention. Microphone 2.
I see the point of the recommendation. I think we do need to look at it, but I have a concern about the ends of the spectrum in terms of small and large congregations, so that I wouldn't be prepared to support the proposal because it includes the 10%.
Yes.
I think I would prefer to vote against the proposal, but then forward it to General Council for discussion and open up the question, because I think it does need to be opened up.
Okay. All right.
I'm speaking as someone who's been in ministry for a long time, and I'm speaking as someone who has left a number of congregations and positions, not often with angst, but I'd just like to say to any of you who are out there, if you've got 10 people in your congregation who are willing to put their name to a piece of paper saying they want to reconsider the pastoral relationship, you should have a congregational meeting and deal with that, whatever our rules are. I think there's some wisdom to what our forefathers did, so I'll vote against this.
Okay.
So can I speak?
No, not yet. But you do have at the end. I just want to make sure that everyone has their time. I'm mindful of time, but I think we can finish this up before I move to the next stuff. Microphone 2.
And so, yes, very quickly, I
You have your
agree
time.
with the last 2 people who spoke. I'm thinking 10%, okay, vote against, but move it forward, but making a suggestion that it would be 10 minimum people or 10%, whichever is greater.
Whichever is greater.
Whichever is greater, thank you.
Okay?
Okay?
Okay.
Are we in clarification or discussion?
We moved to discussion, but if you have a clarification?
No, I have.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
I would like to suggest that instead of defining a number of 10 or 10%, could we do it in a manner that's similar to how we define the number of representatives to presbytery? So depending on the size of the congregation, if you're 0 to 100 members, maybe it's this percentage. If you're 100 to 200 members, maybe it's a larger number, and so on. And that way, it kind of addresses that little tiny congregation, but also deals with the larger congregation.
Okay.
I'm not sure what those numbers should be, but I'm wondering if that could be the recommendation going forward.
Okay, microphone 2.
Dan Benson, St. Paul's, Scarborough Southeast, Toronto Southeast. I'm wondering whether we're getting bogged down in making out a detail here and whether we want to actually just send this forward with the request that General Counsel address this issue of how this vote takes place.
Okay.
Without prescribing numbers and things like this, because it will go into a larger forum to be discussed.
Okay, so it sounds to me as though there is a genuine feeling that perhaps you do feel that this is a good time to discuss, for General Counsel to open up this matter and discuss it, and that you would like to recommend the methodology be beyond 10, be considered that, do you know what I'm saying? No. That's why I'm up here doing this. Yeah. Oh, are you gonna rescue us? Okay, then microphone 2 for the rescue.
That we would like to have this to go forward for discussion, taking into account the difference between smaller and larger churches in how they define the numbers.
Okay.
So, because I think that's what we've been grappling with.
Okay, thank you. That's why we have to work together as a group, folks, because we can do this together. I do need...
Are you ready?
I just need to give her...
Oh, yes.
I need to give her, because I keep forgetting,
So
the last word.
Yeah, just briefly. So absolutely, there is complete wisdom if 10 people are going to put their names down, that there should be some effort made to address those concerns. But in the current system, what happens is that other tools that might be available within the congregation to work it out internally first what happens is something very specific gets triggered and other ways of dealing with the conflict are not able to be explored. So that is what this is addressing.
Thank you. I do need the motion. Yes, and I'm going to ask Jody to clarify.
So, if you agree with the proposal, with or without recommendations, you will vote in favor of this first motion. If you don't agree with the proposal, you will not vote in favor of this motion. And if the motion is defeated, a second motion would come up saying that we don't agree, but we want to forward it, and we could attach the recommendation that Patty offered to that motion.
Yes, Susan's asking for clarification, so microphone 2.
Susan Living Waters. The question I have for Jody is, we can attach that second recommendation even by supporting this, can we not?
Yes, you can.
So
Yes,
we can
you can.
support this and attach the helpful recommendation.
Which was taking into account the difference between smaller and larger churches in determining numbers. So that could also be a recommendation with this motion if you decide to agree.
And I
with
would
it.
support that.
Okay. Is that clear for folks? All right. All of those, so I'm going to read the motion, or can you read the motion?
Yeah. So the motion, moved by myself and seconded by Brian Ransom, that Toronto Conference agrees with the proposal entitled Manual Item 5.3.3, Mandatory Meetings of the Pastoral Charge.
All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And we know, and makes the following recommendations.
And so the oops. I actually was able to write this one down too. Oh, okay.
Okay. We just have to take it off and switch, folks. There we go.
And so then it would be, again, moved by myself and Brian, that we make the following recommendation, taking into account the difference between smaller and larger churches as to how they define the required number. I think it should be determined,
Determine the required.
how they determine the required number.
Microphone 2.
Could we, Paul Hutchison, Toronto Southeast, could we put that number or percentage? Number or percentage?
Oh, so there was a recommendation that, so this could be a second recommendation that the general council would consider using both a number and a percentage.
Required number or percentage?
Yes.
As they, we're talking about proportional representation, right? So how they determine the required number or percentage is what I would suggest.
Yeah.
That's what
Okay.
I heard on the floor.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that,
Using a required number or percentage? Okay.
so that would capture both.
Both, all of that. And or.
So it would be and or percentage.
Whichever is the greatest you think needs to be there? Okay.
Do we want whichever is the greatest?
Yeah, can we leave out the words, those words, or do you want them in there?
So ask if they're warm.
Are you warm to including, warm or cool, to including the words, whichever is the greatest? The greater, thank you. I think you're kind of warm to that. I wouldn't want to worry too much about that in the sense of deciding one way or the other. So we're going to put it in because you seem warm to that. And I think we understand that our points have been captured here, is the intent of these recommendations. All in favor of those recommendations? Any opposed? The motion is carried. What's going to happen now is that I'm going to move to the affirming ministry report. I am going to leave the Right Relations and the PROK report until after lunch, and they will be the first items that we deal with. And before we do that, I do need to make, thank you, Jody, I do need to make a motion regarding the rest of the proposals. I do need to ask for a motion regarding the next.
I don't think we need to make the motion, I just need to inform the court.
Okay.
That the following, because we had it in the opening motion.
It was part of the omnibus motion. Sorry.
I'm getting this.
Point of order.
Point of order, thank you.
Or maybe it's a point of information, President. We've talked about many important issues, and I'm glad about that. We've left these ones about pension for clergy on to the executive, and I'm very disappointed about that. I really wanted to hear the court address what I think are things of great importance to retirees. So I'm prepared to move, if it's in order, that this court direct the executive to forward those three proposals, 7, 8, and 9, as I understand the numbering, no matter their decision about the wisdom of the proposals, if that makes sense.
I have to determine if that's in order.
Yes.
And so I will ask my parliamentarian, Beth Moore,
I have a
who has
second.
joined us at the table.
I have a seconder.
And, oh, thanks for that clarification.
You could just hold.
Okay. So we've decided the motion would be in order. It's just whether or not you want to say yes or no, and be mindful of the time. I wouldn't have a lot of discussion time for you. So can you tell me, are you warm or cool to the idea of a very quick yes or no vote to that? I'm sorry, thank you. To clarifying what that motion is. You seem warm to the idea. I'm not going to allow this. Are you going to do a point of order?
I believe it could be a point of order.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we can bind the executive to make that kind of decision.
Thank you. Okay.
I think that, point of order.
Yes.
I think what we're saying is that regardless, the executive could decide what they want to do, whether or not to concur with that or not. But what we're asking is that it be put forward. I think in an earlier motion that we had that came from a congregation from one level of the court, it was not supported by the presbytery, but
understand what
went
you're saying.
forward to another court. And so
Okay.
regardless of what wisdom that the executive has in this, because we're not able to, as a court, share wisdom on that, we leave it in your hands. But we're asking, regardless of whether or not you concur with 7, 8, and 9, we're asking that it also be put forward for a wider discussion.
Okay. How about, folks, if we hear that wisdom from the court, not just regarding those petitions, but regarding all of the ones that were not, that we were not able to discuss on this court, that be directed towards the executive, that it would be the wisdom of the court that those proposals, the remaining proposals that were not discussed here, which include those ones, and also the others, including the new business, that no matter what the decision of the executive, that they be forwarded to General Council for their attention.
So we think that recommendation can be made?
Having said that, we do agree with Randy that we are not binding the Toronto Conference executive to that, but upholding that as wisdom from this court. Warm or cool to that? I think you're warm to that, and I'm gonna accept that as wisdom. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
So we're doing it as wisdom.
We are doing it as wisdom, yes, rather than a motion, because you're not binding the executive. But we, as your executive, think you're very wise. So we will take that to heart. I'm going to call on Susie. Am I calling on you for our affirming on who? I knew that. I'm calling on Anne at this time for our affirming ministry update. And as I said, the Right Relations and PROK items of business will be our first items of business before lunch. I would, I'll just turn it over to you, Anne.
Okay, thank you. At the November 12th meeting in 2014, Toronto Conference Executive established a task force to make recommendations for taking initial steps to becoming an affirming conference. Last year, at the annual general meeting, you voted in favor of making Toronto Conference an affirming conference, an affirming minister. And although I couldn't be here for that, I was very joyful because we had put a lot of work into the 3-year process of discussing and meeting and inviting feedback from different stakeholders all over the conference, its committees, its commissions, and groups such as the UCW. In June last spring, Toronto Conference Executive agreed to ask the Affirming Ministry Task Group to continue to give leadership to the conference by the following motion. And I'm going to abbreviate it because lunch is approaching. That we continue to do our work on the LGBT issues with an awareness of other areas of marginalization, that we prepare a draft mandate and recommendations, and that we add membership to our group to ensure increasing diversity. Our ongoing mandate includes identifying additional members, and in preparation for the move to regions in the new structure, should that be approved, that we engage in conversation with our neighboring conferences through the executive secretary to find out if any of them are in the process of becoming affirming ministries or if they have already had conversations about that. We know that Bay of Quinte is already affirming. We agreed that we would be a resource to other conferences by sharing our experiences, that we would also share a list of resources, including process and sample vision statements, and that we would assist other groups and regions to engage in the conversations about being safe spaces for people of any gender and sexual orientation and identity within the church and the community. We would also assist the conference to engage in education, focusing on issues with an awareness of intersectionality with other areas such as race, disability, and mental health. And we are continuing that work. It's a step-by-step process, but we have received very good feedback. As you'll see on the screen in front of you, Irides is the Living Apology Project, and I can't read it as well as I should, so I'll just hold mine up here. Irides aspires to be a movement of education, reflection, lament, celebration, and reconciliation as we approach the 30th anniversary of that 1988 vote by the United Church of Canada at General Council to not reject gay and lesbian people for membership and eligibility for ordination. One of the members of Irides, Aaron, will be speaking at the Affirm United conference, which will be held in Toronto in July. It will take place from July 13th to 15th at Royal York Road United Church. All are welcome. You can go online to the website www.ause.ca. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be a very powerful conference, inviting in participation in different workshops and hearing people in plenary sessions. I hope that you'll be able to be there for part or all of it, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move to our announcement time. I have a couple of things to bring to your attention. I'm going to move. I like to move here for announcements. Sorry, I don't know. A couple of things for your attention. First of all, this pair of glasses was found in the parking lot, slightly askew. They do go with my outfit, but if they are yours, if you please feel welcome to come and get them. Also, just a reminder that as we are at lunch here, if you are to be a part of the celebration of ministry service, and I know all of you are in some ways, but if you are a participant because you are being celebrated, or if you are taking part as a communion leader or leadership in other way, please remember that you are supposed to go to the St. Paul's Sanctuary for rehearsal, and you will be fed there. And also, a reminder, there is a choir rehearsal, which is being held here in the plenary room, and that is happening at 12:45. So maybe we could just sit back if you're not either part of either of those two groups, so that the folks in those groups can move to lunch and to where they need to be. We will gather back here at 1:45 for music, and after we hear from our two reports that we move to the 2 o'clock timing, we're going to celebrate our lives as Toronto Conference together. And before the band starts, I do want to call Kirsty Hunter forward. And while she's doing that, I did want to shout out to Michelle Owens, who's here from the Center for Christian Studies, principal, that she's in the room with us, in the court with us. And Marilyn, right? Marilyn? And Marilyn Legg, I know, was here. Oh, there she is, yay, from Emmanuel College. I'm not aware that we have our other, anybody here from the other, not that you went to school there, because I went to Queen's, but I'm just saying. We don't have a representative from any of our other places. All right, thanks. Thank you. We thank you for being here with us today. I'm going to go to Kirsty, and then for Grace. Okay?
Before I start, is it going to be possible to share these links in my letter in some way? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm coming here with not so much last-minute business, but something that is urgently happening in our world. Watching the news is never good for you, and this is not good for our stomachs, so I apologize for doing this right before lunch. The U.S. government has initiated a policy over the last little while of separating children and parents at the border, especially the southern border, as they come across as refugees, migrants, whoever they are. And this is a policy is in place as a punitive measure and also there to dissuade other people from coming and trying to find a safe haven as they escape from violence. In the recent reports indicate as many as 7,000, probably more, have been seized from their parents, and keeping in mind that these are children who are, some of them are toddlers and infants, and some of them are children and teenagers, okay, so of all ages. They've been seized from their parents. There is publicly available video through news organizations showing the agents ripping the children, screaming and crying from their parents' sobbing arms. This is not a gentle process. This is a seizure. Of these 7,000 children that we know about in a government report, or a report to the government, approximately 1,475 have gone missing. There is some suspicion and some good support for that suspicion that some of them have ended up in the hands of criminals, abusers, and human traffickers. And they may never be able to be reunited with their parents. So, there is a petition on change.org that is requesting that the U.S. government immediately stop this process, this policy. The sponsoring organization is a children's rights organization that has been advocating for children in the foster system and other places within the U.S. government for a while. So this is an accredited organization sponsoring this petition. Excuse me. I also have a text of a letter that if people would like to write letters to our government to request government-to-government action for our government to put pressure on the U.S. to stop this unacceptable policy, you might want to send your own letter. And Audrey has said that she will make these links and letter available on the conference website so that people can take this action. I would strongly encourage everyone to do this and to spread the word. Governments sometimes do terrible things, and one of the most terrible things that we do again and again and again, Canadian governments, U.S. governments, British governments, is taking children away from their families in order to punish people in some way. And so I would urge you strongly to respond to this and to engage in prayer that wisdom and humanity might prevail. Thank you for giving me the time. Oh, what? Yes. Thank you. Audrey says that I can lead us in a prayer right now.
Can I have a point of privilege first?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is horrible to think about, but we also need to be aware. I'm working with 3 refugee families in Brampton who have been separated from their children, young children, for 3 and 4 years to go through the process of getting those families who are refugees and had to flee for their lives separately back together again. So before we get too high and mighty about telling the United States government what to do, maybe we should be aware of what's happening in our own country, that there are families here that we're keeping away from their parents.
Thank you. And I think that you will add that to your prayer and to our awareness that, as Kirsty did say, this is not just something the American government does. It is something our own government has done and does continue to do. And it is the attention of the issue of taking children from their families and putting them into danger and peril is one that needs to be in our hearts.
Thank you, Audrey. Friends, let us pray. Holy One, you announced your kingdom of God present already, and yet we live in the space of already, and we can see not yet. Our hearts are full, we weep, and our tears are added to the tears of parents throughout time and space who have lost their children to war, to violence, to government policy. Holy One, we come to you today in prayer. We come to you today in prayer for those children in the United States who are being ripped from arms and sent into foster systems, literally into military warehouses and other unsafe places. We pray for those families who are separated by bureaucracy and red tape. We pray for those families who are separated by policies requiring refugees to take the most dangerous road to find a safe haven. Holy One, our prayer today is just simply this, that you would hold every single one of us in your arms, that those of us who are in a safe place would advocate for those who need a haven, that those who are in danger might find helping hands along the way, and that those who are in government and positions of power might find wisdom and compassion to treat every single child as the precious, precious image of God that he or she is. Amen. Thank you.
We come to our grace, and as we sing, our hearts are filled with a sense of sorrow and tears. We are thankful for all the goodness that we have in our lives, and we sing, as we sing thanks for our goodness, we also pray for those who do not have that goodness.
We're going to sing this through once, this song, and then Ruth is going to lead this group to start off in a round, and then I'm going to start this group in the second part of the round. So you just follow us, and we'll sing it two more times after we start to sing it in a round. Here we go.